Welcome, my dear viewers and listeners. I am truly beholden to you for bearing with me when I could not deliver last week. Thank you. Thank you very much. The views on my last video, which was not, they really warm my heart. I am so glad. Thank you. Starting today and in the coming weeks, I will read to you the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. This book is one of the reasons why I started this channel in the first place. I have this wonderful, beautiful old edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. It says, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, rendered into English verse by Edward J. Fitzgerald, with drawings by Edmund J. Sullivan. Also it says this is an Emont classic, specially selected for the Emont Library from the immortal literature of the world. I could not agree with them more. Before I start reading, there is a small little story behind this book. This book belongs to my dear friend Sanjeev Bhatti. I took it off him I took it off him in 1987. You can calculate how many years ago that was. I took it off him 1987. I dare say without his knowing. For the last 34 years, I have held this book close to my heart. And every time I have picked it up, I have remembered Sanjeev Bhatti. Someday, inshallah, I may return it to him. Only we are countries apart. Let's see. But yes, if you're watching my video, I love you for this, man. I love you anyway, but I love you for this book. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been the best gift in my life. Thank you. Before I start reading the verses, I will read to you small excerpts, a few lines from the introduction by Edward Fitzgerald. They give a background to Omar Khayyam. Who was Omar Khayyam? What is he all about? It's very small. A few minutes. Please allow me a few minutes. And then over the coming weeks, I'm going to read all these verses. Omar Khayyam, the astronomer poet of Persia. Omar Khayyam was born at Naishapur in Khorasan in the latter half of our 11th century. The slender story of his life is curiously twined about that of two other very considerable figures in their time and country, one of whom tells the story of all three. This was Nizam-ul-Mulk, Wazir to Alp Arslan, the son, and Malik Shah, the grandson of Toghrul Beg the Tatar, who had wrested Persia from the feeble successor of Mahmud the Great. This Nizam-ul-Mulk, in his Wasiyat or testament, which he wrote and left as a memorial for future statesmen, relates the following. One of the greatest of the wise men of Khorasan was the Imam Muwaffaq of Naishapur, a man highly honored and reverenced. May God rejoice his soul. His illustrious years exceeded 85, and it was the universal belief that every boy who read the Quran or studied the traditions in his presence would assuredly attain to honor and happiness. For this cause did my father send me from Tus to Naishapur with Abdus Samad, the doctor of law, that I might employ myself in study and learning under the guidance of that illustrious teacher. Towards me he ever turned an eye of favor and kindness, and as his pupil I felt for him extreme affection and devotion, so that I passed 4 years in his service. When I first came there, I found 2 other pupils of mine own age, newly arrived, Hakim Omar Khayyam and the ill-fated Ben Sabah. Both were endowed with sharpness of wit and the highest natural powers, and we 3 formed a close friendship together. When the Imam rose from his lectures, they used to join me, and we repeated to each other the lessons we had heard. Now, Omar was a native of Naishapur, while Hassan ben Sabah's father was one Ali, a man of austere life and practice, but heretical in his creed and doctrine. One day Hassan said to me and to Khayyam, "It is a universal belief that the pupils of the Imam Muwaffaq will attain to fortune. Now, even if we all do not attain thereto, without doubt one of us will. What then shall be our mutual pledge and bond?" We answered, "Be it what you please." "Well," he said, "let us make a vow that to whomsoever this fortune falls, he shall share it equally with the rest, and reserve no preeminence for himself." "Be it so," we both replied, and on those terms we mutually pledged our words. Years rolled on, and I went from Khorasan to Transoxiana and wandered to Ghazni and Kabul. And when I returned, I was invested with office and rose to be administrator of affairs during the Sultanate of Sultan Alp Arslan. He goes on to state that years passed by, and both his old school friends found him out and came and claimed a share in his good fortune, according to the school day vow. The vizier was generous and kept his word. Hassan demanded a place in the government, which the Sultan granted at the vizier's request. Omar Khayyam also came to the vizier to claim his share, but not to ask for title or office. "The greatest boon you can confer on me," he said, "is to let me live in a corner under the shadow of your fortune, and to spread wide the advantages of science and pray for your long life and prosperity." The vizier tells us that when he found Omar was really sincere in his refusal, he pressed him no further, but granted him a yearly pension of 1,200 mitkals of gold from the treasury of Naishapur. At Naishapur thus lived and died Omar Khayyam, busied in winning knowledge of every kind, and especially in astronomy, wherein he attained to a very high preeminence. It is written in the chronicles of the ancients that this king of the wise, Omar Khayyam, died at Naishapur in the year of the Hijra 517, AD 1123. In science he was unrivaled, the very paragon of his age. Khwaja Nizami of Samarkand, who was one of his pupils, relates the following story. "I often used to hold conversations with my teacher, Omar Khayyam, in a garden, and one day he said to me, 'My tomb shall be in a spot where the north wind may scatter roses over it.' I wondered at the words he spake, but I knew that his were no idle words. Years after, when I chanced to revisit Naishapur, I went to his final resting place, and lo, it was just outside a garden, and trees laden with fruit stretched their boughs over the garden wall and dropped their flowers upon his tomb, so that the stone was hidden under them. Awake! For morning in the bowl of night has flung the stone that puts the stars to flight. And lo, the hunter of the east has caught the sultan's turret in a noose of light. Dreaming when dawn's left hand was in the sky, I heard a voice within the tavern cry, "Awake, my little ones, and fill the cup before life's liquor in its cup be dry." And as the cock crew, those who stood before the tavern shouted, "Open the door! You know how little while we have to stay, and once departed may return no more." Now the new year reviving old desires, the thoughtful soul to solitude retires, where the white hand of Moses on the bough puts out, and Jesus from the ground suspires. Iram indeed is gone with all its rose, and Jamshed's seven-ringed cup where no one knows. But still the vine her ancient ruby yields, and still a garden by the water blows. And David's lips are locked, but in divine high-piping Pillavi, with wine, 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 red wine, the nightingale cries to the rose, that yellow cheek of hers to incarnadine. Come, fill the cup, and in the fire of spring the winter garment of repentance fling. The bird of time has but a little way to fly, and lo, the bird is on the wing. And look, 1,000 blossoms with the day woke, and 1,000 scatter into clay. And this first summer month that brings the rose shall take Jamshed and Kaikobad away. But come with old Khayyam and leave the lot of Kaikobad and Kaikhosro forgot. Let Rustam lay about him as he will, or Hatim Tai cry supper, heed them not. With me along some strip of herbage strewn that just divides the desert from the sown, where name of slave and sultan scarce is known, and pity Sultan Mahmud on his throne. Here with a loaf of bread beneath the bough, a flask of wine, a book of verse, and thou beside me singing in the wilderness, and wilderness is paradise enow. How sweet is mortal sovereignty, think some. Others, how blessed the paradise to come. Ah, take the cash in hand and wave the rest. Oh, the brave music of a distant drum. Look to the rose that blows about us. Lo, laughing, she says, into the world I blow. At once the silken tassel of my purse tear, and its treasure on the garden throw. The worldly hope men set their hearts upon turns ashes, or it prospers, and anon, like snow upon the desert's dusty face, lighting a little hour or two, is gone. And those who husbanded the golden grain, and those who flung it to the winds like rain, Alike to no such aureate earth are turned as buried once men want dug up again. Think, in this battered caravanserai, whose doorways are alternate night and day, how Sultan after Sultan with his pomp abode his hour or two, and went his way. They say the lion and the lizard keep the courts where Jamshed gloried and drank deep, and Bahram, that great hunter, the wild ass stamps o'er his head, and he lies fast asleep. I sometimes think that never blows so red the rose as where some buried Caesar bled, that every hyacinth the garden wears dropped in its lap from some once lovely head. And this delightful herb whose tender green fledges the river's lip on which we lean, lean upon it lightly, for who knows from what once lovely lip it springs unseen. My beloved, fill the cup that clears today of past regrets and future fears. Tomorrow? Why, tomorrow I may be myself with yesterday's 7,000 years. Lo, some we loved, the loveliest and the best that time and fate of all the vintage pressed, have drunk their cup a round or two before, and one by one crept silently to rest. And we, that now make merry in the room they left, and summer dresses in new bloom, ourselves must we beneath the couch of earth descend, ourselves to make a couch for whom? Make the most of what we yet may spend, before we too into the dust descend, dust into dust, and under dust to lie, sans wine, sans song, sans singer, and sans end. I have to register my gratitude to young Naveen. He has helped me today with all the arrangements, with the camera work, with the light, closing and opening windows, and doing so much. Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you.
तुम भी यार कुछ सुना दो, कोई पोयम शोयम, कोई बात सुना दो. चलो तुम तैयार करना, फिर पढ़ेंगे, ठीक है? ठीक है, जब आपका दिल करेगा ना तैयार कर लो, 1-2 दिन में फिर पढ़ेंगे, ठीक है? अगली बार आपका वीडियो आएगा, क्यों?
जी.
Oh, good. Shabash. Thank you, Naveen. Thank you so much.